Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're embarking on an absolutely incredible journey through time. We're talking about the entire history of human civilization, from our earliest ancestors walking the African plains to the moment you're watching this video on your smartphone. This is 300,000 years of human achievement, struggle, innovation, and survival, condensed into one epic story. So buckle up, grab your favorite snack, and let's dive into the most fascinating story ever told, our story. Our journey begins in Africa, approximately 300,000 years ago, where Homo sapiens, that's us modern humans, first emerged. But here's the thing, we weren't alone on this planet. Neanderthals roamed through Europe and parts of Asia, Denisovans lived in Siberia, and several other human species shared the Earth with us. These early humans lived as hunter-gatherers, moving from place to place in small groups of maybe 25 to 50 people, searching for food, shelter, and safety. They collected fruits, nuts, and roots, hunted animals when they could, and lived completely at the mercy of nature. But even in these early days, something special was happening. Humans were developing language, the ability to communicate complex ideas, share knowledge, and tell stories. We were learning to control fire, which provided warmth, protection from predators, and most importantly, cooked food that helped our brains grow larger and more complex. We were making tools, simple stone implements at first, but gradually getting better with each generation. This was the foundation of everything that would come next. Around 70,000 years ago, something remarkable happened. Small groups of humans began leaving Africa, venturing into unknown territories in what we call the Great Migration. Some groups moved into the Middle East, then spread into Europe. Others headed east into Asia. Over thousands of years, humans reached every corner of the globe. Australia about 65,000 years ago, and finally the Americas somewhere between 15 and 20,000 years ago. Everywhere humans went, they adapted. They learned to survive in frozen Arctic tundras, scorching deserts, dense rainforests, and everything in between. This adaptability, this incredible flexibility to learn and adjust to any environment, became humanity's greatest strength. Then, around 10,000 BCE, everything changed. This was the agricultural revolution, also called the Neolithic Revolution, and it completely transformed human society. In an area we call the Fertile Crescent, which today includes parts of Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, people discovered they could plant seeds, grow crops, and harvest food. They domesticated wheat and barley. Similar discoveries happened independently around the world. Rice in China, corn and beans in Mesoamerica, and various crops in other regions. This wasn't just about farming. It was about a complete lifestyle transformation. Instead of constantly moving, people settled down in permanent villages. Small groups of 50 became communities of hundreds, then thousands. People could store food, accumulate possessions, and own property. They domesticated animals like dogs, sheep, goats, cattle, and horses, which provided food, labor, and transportation. But this revolution had consequences too. Agriculture created social hierarchies, with some people becoming wealthy landowners while others remained laborers. Dense populations meant diseases could spread more easily. Stored resources needed protection, leading to organized warfare. But it also meant specialization. Not everyone had to farm, so some people became craftsmen, traders, priests, and artists. Civilization as we know it was beginning to take shape. With agriculture came the world's first true civilizations, complex societies with cities, governments, writing systems, and organized religions. Around 3500 BCE in Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in modern-day Iraq, the Sumerians built cities like Ur, Uruk, and eventually Babylon. They invented cuneiform writing, wedge-shaped symbols pressed into clay tablets. They invented the wheel, revolutionizing transportation and pottery. They developed complex mathematics based on the number 60, which is why we still have 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour today. They created some of the world's first legal codes, most famously the Code of Hammurabi from around 1750 BCE, which laid out laws and punishments in detail. Meanwhile, along the Nile River in Egypt, another extraordinary civilization was flourishing from about 3100 BCE. ancient Egypt gave us the pyramids, those massive architectural marvels that still inspire awe today. They developed hieroglyphics, a complex writing system combining pictures and symbols. Egyptian pharaohs ruled as god-kings with absolute power. They made advances in medicine, astronomy, and engineering, and their practice of mummification showed their deep belief in the afterlife. Over in the Indus Valley, covering parts of modern Pakistan and northwest India, another sophisticated civilization emerged around 3300 BCE. The cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro featured remarkably advanced urban planning, with grid-patterned streets and sophisticated drainage systems that wouldn't look out of place in a modern city. They had standardized weights and measures for trade, though their writing system remains undeciphered to this day, one of history's great mysteries. In China, along the Yellow River Valley, Chinese civilization was developing with the Shang dynasty around 2000 BCE, featuring oracle bones used for divination, advanced bronze working, and the beginnings of Chinese writing. These civilizations laid the groundwork for everything that would follow. Now we enter what historians call the Classical Age, roughly from 800 BCE to 500 CE, and this is where things get really interesting. Ancient Greece, from about 800 to 146 BCE, gave the world so much that we still use today. Greek philosophers like Socrates asked profound questions about life, justice, and knowledge. His student Plato imagined ideal societies and explored the nature of reality. Plato's student Aristotle basically invented logic and made huge contributions to science. These thinkers are still studied in universities worldwide because their ideas remain relevant. Athens developed democracy, allowing citizens to vote on laws and policies, though we should note this was limited to free male citizens, excluding women, slaves, and foreigners. Greek literature gave us Homer's epic poems, the Iliad and Odyssey, stories still read and loved today. In science, Pythagoras revolutionized mathematics. Archimedes made breakthrough discoveries in physics and engineering, and Hippocrates established medical ethics with the Hippocratic Oath that doctors still take today. Greek art and architecture, like the Parthenon Temple in Athens, set standards of beauty that influenced Western art for millennia. The Greeks even started the Olympic Games in 776 BCE, combining athletic competition with religious celebration. Greek city-states often fought each other, with the rivalry between Athens and Sparta being particularly famous, but when the massive Persian Empire threatened them, the Greeks united to defend their homeland in legendary battles like Marathon and Thermopylae. Then came Alexander the Great, a young Macedonian prince who, between 336 and 323 BCE, conquered an empire stretching from Greece through Egypt, Persia, and all the way to the borders of India. He spread Greek culture everywhere he went, creating what we call the Hellenistic period, where Greek ideas mixed with local cultures across a vast territory. But the civilization that would truly dominate the classical world was Rome. Starting as a small city in Italy around 753 BCE, Rome grew into history's most powerful empire. During the Roman Republic period from 509 to 27 BCE, Rome was governed by elected representatives and a senate, though the system gradually became corrupted by inequality and political violence. Julius Caesar, a brilliant military general, became immensely popular but threatening to the Senate, which assassinated him in 44 BCE in one of history's most famous betrayals. His adopted son, Augustus, became Rome's first emperor in 27 BCE, beginning the Roman Empire period that would last until 476 CE in the West. Rome's contributions to civilization are almost impossible to overstate. They built over 250,000 miles of roads, creating a network so extensive that we still say, all roads lead to Rome. They constructed aqueducts to bring fresh water to cities, an engineering feat that some still function today. Roman law became the foundation of modern legal systems across the world. Latin, the Roman language, evolved into the Romance languages: Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. Roman architecture gave us structures like the Colosseum and the Pantheon, buildings that still stand after 2,000 years. The Pax Romana, or Roman peace, lasted about 200 years and allowed trade, culture, and learning to flourish across an enormous territory. Christianity emerged during Roman times, starting as a small Jewish sect, but gradually spreading throughout the empire. When Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity in 313 CE and later converted himself, it changed the course of world history. But empires don't last forever. By 476 CE, the Western Roman Empire had collapsed due to barbarian invasions, economic troubles, political instability, and internal decay. The eastern half, which we call the Byzantine Empire, survived another 1,000 years until 1453. After Rome's fall, Europe entered what we call the Middle Ages. Roughly from 500 to 1500 CE, society organized itself around feudalism, a hierarchical system where kings granted land to nobles in exchange for military service. Nobles had knights who fought for them, and at the bottom were peasants or serfs who worked the land. The Catholic Church became Europe's most powerful institution, sometimes even more powerful than kings. Monasteries preserved ancient knowledge through the so-called Dark Ages, which honestly weren't as dark as the name suggests. Meanwhile, a new religion was transforming the world. After the Prophet Muhammad's death in 632 CE, Islam spread rapidly across the Middle East, North Africa, Spain, and into Central Asia. The Islamic Golden Age, from roughly the 8th to 13th centuries, saw incredible achievements. Muslim scholars made huge advances in mathematics, giving us algebra, which comes from the Arabic word al-jabr. In medicine, physicians like Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, wrote medical texts used for centuries. Islamic astronomers named many stars. We still use those Arabic names today, like Aldebaran and Altair. Muslim philosophers preserved and translated ancient Greek texts that might otherwise have been lost. Islamic architecture produced magnificent mosques with intricate geometric designs. Libraries like Baghdad's House of Wisdom became centers of learning that attracted scholars from around the world. In the 13th century, the Mongols under Genghis Khan conquered the largest land empire in history, stretching from China to Eastern Europe. Though they had a reputation as brutal conquerors, they also revived the Silk Road, facilitating trade and cultural exchange between East and West. Genghis Khan's grandson Kublai Khan established the Yuan dynasty in China, and his court was famously visited by the Italian merchant Marco Polo, whose tales of Asian wonders fascinated Europeans. Then, in 14th century Italy, something remarkable began. The Renaissance, meaning rebirth. This was a revival of classical Greek and Roman learning combined with new creativity and innovation. Renaissance art gave us geniuses like Leonardo da Vinci, who painted the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, while also designing flying machines and studying anatomy. Michelangelo sculpted David and painted the Sistine Chapel ceiling. In literature, we got Dante in Italy and Shakespeare in England. The scientific method developed, emphasizing observation and experimentation over ancient authority. Humanism emerged as a philosophy focusing on human potential and achievements, rather than purely religious concerns. And perhaps most importantly, around 1440, Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press with movable type. This was a game changer. Books, which had been expensive and rare, became affordable and widely available. Knowledge was democratized. Ideas could spread faster than ever before. This single invention helped spark everything that followed. The 15th through 17th centuries brought the age of exploration. European nations built ships and sailed across oceans, seeking new trade routes, wealth, and territory. Portuguese explorers like Vasco da Gama reached India by sea in 1498. Christopher Columbus, sailing for Spain, reached the Americas in 1492, though he famously thought he'd reached India. Ferdinand Magellan's expedition achieved the first circumnavigation of the globe. British, French, and Dutch explorers followed, establishing colonies around the world. These voyages were motivated by desires for spices, gold, and silk, but the consequences for indigenous populations were often devastating. Diseases to which they had no immunity, colonization, slavery, and in many cases, genocide. It's a dark chapter that reminds us that progress for some often came at terrible cost to others. The 16th and 17th centuries also brought the scientific revolution, fundamentally changing how we understand the universe. Nicholas Copernicus proposed that the sun, not Earth, was the center of the solar system, contradicting church teachings. Galileo Galilei built telescopes, observed the heavens, and supported Copernicus, facing threats from the church for his ideas. Isaac Newton discovered gravity, supposedly inspired by a falling apple, and developed laws of motion that explained how objects move. He also invented calculus, giving mathematics powerful new tools. These breakthroughs established science as we know it today, based on observation, experimentation, and mathematical precision. The 18th century brought the Enlightenment, an intellectual movement emphasizing reason, logic, and individual rights. Philosophers like Voltaire championed freedom of speech and religion. Jean-Jacques Rousseau developed ideas about the social contract, arguing that governments should represent the people's will. John Locke wrote about natural rights, life, liberty, and property, ideas that would inspire revolutions. Speaking of which, the American Revolution began in 1776 when 13 British colonies declared independence, stating that all men are created equal and that people have rights that no government can take away. After winning their war, they created the United States of America, the world's first modern democracy. In 1789, the French Revolution erupted with the cry of liberty, equality, fraternity. The French people overthrew their monarchy, executed King Louis XVII, and attempted to create a republic. The revolution became violent and chaotic, eventually leading to Napoleon Bonaparte's rise. Napoleon was a brilliant military leader who conquered most of Europe before being defeated in 1815 at Waterloo. Revolutionary fervor spread to Latin America, where leaders like Simón Bolívar led independence movements against Spanish rule. The late 18th and 19th centuries brought the Industrial Revolution, perhaps the most transformative change in human history since agriculture. Starting in Britain and spreading worldwide, this revolution was powered by new technology. James Watt's improved steam engine-powered factories, trains, and ships. The textile industry mechanized with inventions like the spinning jenny and power loom, enabling mass production. Coal and iron became crucial resources, leading to mining booms. Factories drew people from rural villages to growing cities, causing rapid urbanization. Railways revolutionized transportation, while steamships made ocean travel faster and more reliable. The positive impacts included economic growth, more goods at cheaper prices, and the emergence of a middle class. But there were serious negatives too. Factory working conditions were often horrible, with long hours, dangerous machinery, and even child labor. Cities became crowded and polluted. Wealth inequality increased dramatically. Gradually, reforms came. Labor laws, unions, and improved working conditions, but it took decades of struggle. The 19th century also saw European imperialism reach its peak. European powers colonized vast territories across Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. The British Empire became so vast that it was said the sun never sets on it, including India, Australia, Canada, parts of Africa, and the Caribbean. France, the Netherlands, Portugal, Belgium, and Germany also built colonial empires. Africa was literally divided up on maps by European leaders without regard for existing ethnic groups or kingdoms, creating borders and conflicts that still cause problems today. In India, the British East India Company had been trading since the 1600s, but gradually took political control. After the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, also called the First War of Independence, failed, the British Crown took direct control, beginning the period known as the British Raj. Colonial rule brought economic exploitation, famines, and cultural suppression, though colonizers built infrastructure like railways, often primarily to extract resources rather than benefit local populations. Then came the 20th century, and with it, unprecedented violence and change. World War I from 1914 to 1918 was called the War to End All Wars, though tragically it wasn't. Caused by nationalism, imperialism, militarism, and a complex system of alliances, the war began when Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria was assassinated. Soon, most of Europe was at war. This was the first industrial-scale war, featuring trench warfare where soldiers lived in muddy trenches for months. New weapons like machine guns, tanks, poison gas, and airplanes. millions died. When it ended, the Treaty of Versailles punished Germany harshly with heavy reparations and territorial losses, creating resentment that would contribute to World War II. During the war, Russia experienced its own revolution in 1917. The communist Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, overthrew the Tsar and eventually established the Soviet Union, the world's first communist state. Under Joseph Stalin, it became a totalitarian regime responsible for millions of deaths. World War II, from 1939 to 1945, was even more devastating. Fascism had risen in Europe, Mussolini in Italy, Hitler in Germany, and militarism in Japan. Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party promoted extreme nationalism and racism, blaming Jews and other groups for Germany's problems. The Holocaust was the systematic murder of 6 million Jews in concentration camps and gas chambers, one of history's darkest chapters. The war began when Germany invaded Poland in September 1939. Germany conquered most of Europe. Japan expanded across the Pacific and attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941, bringing America into the war. The Allies, Britain, the Soviet Union, and the United States fought the Axis powers of Germany, Italy, and Japan. Cities were bombed, entire populations displaced, and combat raged across multiple continents. The Soviet Union and America eventually turned the tide. In August 1945, the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, demonstrating the terrifying power of nuclear weapons. Japan surrendered. The war had killed somewhere between 70 and 85 million people. Europe and Japan lay in ruins, but two new superpowers had emerged, the United States and the Soviet Union. This led directly to the Cold War, a period of tension lasting from roughly 1947 to 1991. The world divided into two blocks, the capitalist, democratic West, led by America, and the communist East, led by the Soviet Union. While they never fought directly, hence Cold War, they fought proxy wars in Korea and Vietnam, engaged in an arms race building thousands of nuclear weapons, and competed in the space race. The Soviets launched Sputnik, the first satellite, and sent Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space. America responded by landing Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon in 1969, with Armstrong's famous words, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 brought the world frighteningly close to nuclear war. The Berlin Wall, built in 1961, divided the German city and symbolized the divided world. The Cold War finally ended when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, leaving America as the world's sole superpower. The decades after World War II also saw decolonization. European powers, weakened by the war, could no longer hold their empires. India and Pakistan gained independence in 1947, though partition led to massive violence and displacement. Indonesia, the Philippines, and dozens of African nations gained independence through the 1950s and 60s. In South Africa, Nelson Mandela fought against apartheid, a system of racial segregation and oppression. Mandela spent 27 years in prison but never gave up. When apartheid finally ended in 1994, Mandela became South Africa's first black president, showing the world the power of forgiveness and reconciliation. The late 20th century brought the information age. Computers, which started as room-sized machines in the 1940s and 50s, gradually became smaller and more powerful. Personal computers arrived in the 1980s, with pioneers like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates making them accessible to ordinary people. Then came the internet in the 1990s. Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web, connecting computers globally. Information became instantly accessible. Communication was revolutionized. Mobile phones evolved from expensive luxury items to essential tools. Smartphones became mini-computers we carry everywhere. Social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube emerged in the 2000s, transforming how we communicate, share information, and even how we see ourselves. These changes brought both benefits and challenges. Instant global communication, but also misinformation. Connection, but also isolation. Opportunity, but also surveillance. Today, we live in an interconnected world. Globalization means goods, services, ideas, and culture flow rapidly across borders. China has risen as an economic superpower and manufacturing hub. We face unprecedented challenges. Climate change threatens our planet with rising temperatures, melting glaciers, and extreme weather. The COVID-19 pandemic from 2019 to 2023 showed how vulnerable we remain to disease despite medical advances. We've made incredible medical progress, eradicating diseases like smallpox, developing life-saving surgeries and treatments, yet millions still lack basic health care. Technology continues advancing at breathtaking speed. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are transforming industries. Private companies like SpaceX are making space travel more accessible with dreams of Mars colonization. We're editing genes, developing quantum computers, and creating technologies our ancestors couldn't have imagined. Social progress continues too, with expanding rights for women, LGBTQ+ individuals, and marginalized communities, though the fight for equality continues. Democracy has spread but also faces challenges from authoritarianism and extremism. So here we are, having traveled from the African savanna to the digital age, from stone tools to spacecraft, from small tribal groups to a global civilization of 8 billion people. Human history is a story of adaptation, learning to survive in every environment and overcome every challenge. It's a story of innovation, constantly creating new tools, ideas, and solutions. It's a story of conflict but also cooperation, of terrible violence but also incredible compassion and art. It's a story of progress, though we should remember that progress isn't linear. Great civilizations have risen and fallen. Egypt, Rome, the Maya, all were mighty. All ended. The question facing us now is, what will we do with the unprecedented power we've gained? We have technology and scientific knowledge our ancestors couldn't dream of, but with great power comes great responsibility. We face existential challenges, climate change, nuclear weapons, artificial intelligence, pandemics. But human history shows us that when we work together, we can solve incredible problems. From one small group in Africa, we've become 8 billion people on every continent. Every culture, every language, every person is unique, but we're all connected, all part of this ongoing human story. The next chapter hasn't been written yet. It depends on choices we make today. Choices about how we treat each other, how we treat our planet, and what kind of future we want to create. That's the beauty and the burden of living in historic times. We're not just learning history, we're making it. Every day, with every choice, we're writing the next page of humanity's incredible story. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through time. History teaches us humility, showing how small we are in time's vast ocean, but it also inspires us, proving that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. Let's make sure the future we create is one that makes our ancestors proud and gives our descendants hope. See you in the next video.